They say love and power don't mix. I thought I could have both, but when I made him choose, I realized his heart belonged to something colder than me. I gave him everything, and when the moment came, he chose wrong. But life, it had the last word, and so did I. Before I take you into the most heartbreaking chapter of my life, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell. If you've ever had to walk away from someone you loved just to protect your peace, this story is for you. Let's get into it. I've always believed in two things: hard work and heart. I was raised by women who carried the world on their backs and still managed to laugh loud, cook big, and love deeply. My mother taught me that being a Black woman means you walk into every room twice, as yourself and as someone who's constantly proving her worth. I never saw that as a burden, though. I wore it like a crown. There was power in knowing who I was. I knew I wasn't meant to just exist. I was meant to create, to move people, to leave something behind that couldn't be erased. So, I threw myself into my passion. For me, that was designing. Clothes, spaces, experiences. I wanted to build beauty from pain, to give other women something to feel strong in. I started small, selling handmade pieces from my tiny apartment, working double shifts, stitching late into the night. But people started to notice. My work began showing up in magazines, on runways, in rooms I once only dreamed of entering. And through it all, I stayed grounded. I wasn't chasing fame or fortune. I just wanted to make something real, something that mattered. And then, he appeared. Not in some dramatic movie-style entrance. No spotlight, no fireworks. Just a simple moment. One of those quiet pauses in life that shifts everything without warning. He didn't look like the type of man I'd normally fall for. Too polished, too perfect. But there was something in his eyes, in the way he listened when I spoke, that made me feel seen, really seen. At the time, I didn't know who he was, not really, and I definitely didn't know the empire he'd built behind that calm smile. All I knew was that something about him felt different and dangerous. It was one of those rainy afternoons where everything feels a little slower, a little softer. I had ducked into this quiet bookstore cafe downtown, my favorite kind of place, the kind where you can hide in a corner and just exist. I wasn't looking for anything that day, definitely not him. I had my sketch pad, my tea, and a head full of ideas I was trying to organize into my next collection. That's when he asked if the seat across from me was taken. Simple, polite. Nothing in his tone said flirtation, but everything about his energy pulled me in. He introduced himself casually, first name only. I told him mine. And for the next hour, we talked about everything but business. Music, childhood memories, the books that changed our lives. He didn't name drop, didn't flex, didn't try to impress. He just listened, really listened. I noticed the small things, the way he paused before answering, how he never checked his phone, how his smile didn't feel like something he gave away easily. It felt earned. I walked away thinking about him more than I should have, and then he came back. Same place, same time, a week later. Like it was our little secret. That turned into a pattern. We'd meet there almost every Thursday. No pressure, no expectations. Just two people finding comfort in the quiet company of each other. When he finally told me who he really was, a billionaire with businesses across continents, I didn't know how to react. But what shocked me more was that he didn't lead with that. He didn't want to impress me. He just wanted to know me. And that made it harder not to fall, because I wasn't falling for a title or a bank account. I was falling for the man behind it. Falling for him didn't happen all at once. It was slow, like rain soaking into dry ground. He was intentional, thoughtful, never rushed. Every moment with him felt like it had weight, like it mattered. He paid attention to the little things. He remembered the exact way I liked my tea, the playlist I worked to, the name of my high school art teacher. It wasn't just that he listened, It was that he held those pieces of me like they were precious. In a world that often demanded I shrink myself just to fit in, he made room for all of me. And that felt rare. He started showing up in my life more and more, not just at the cafe, but at my shows, my gallery openings, even my mom's Sunday dinners. He didn't try to overshadow or impress. He blended in. He helped my aunt carry groceries to the car. He let my cousins talk his ear off about sneakers and side hustles. They liked him. And slowly, I started imagining a future with him in it. We'd have these long, late-night conversations that stretched into early morning, talking about everything: love, legacy, fear. He'd open up about the pressure of running an empire, the isolation that came with wealth, the masks he wore in boardrooms and interviews. And I'd share my own struggles, being underestimated, being told I was too much, too loud, too ambitious. In those conversations, we found a kind of intimacy that felt deeper than touch. I wasn't blind to our differences. He came from a world of power and polish. I came from a world that had to fight for every inch. But in those early days, none of that mattered. We were just two people choosing each other, quietly, fully, and with hope. At first, the differences between our worlds felt exciting, like we were building a bridge between two lives that rarely touched. But the higher we climbed together, the more I started to feel the cracks forming beneath us. It began with the little things. Suddenly, he was harder to reach. The texts that once came quickly were now delayed. Our Thursday meetups became once-a-month check-ins, squeezed between meetings and flights. He told me it was just a busy season, that the business needed more of him. And I believed him, until it became a pattern I couldn't ignore. Then there were the events, the black tie galas, the investor dinners, the sleek, glassy rooms where I was often the only black woman in sight. I'd walk in holding his hand, but somehow I still felt invisible. The smiles were polite but cold. The conversation stopped when I joined them. No one asked me about my work, my art, my voice. And he never corrected them. He'd just squeeze my hand a little tighter, like that was supposed to make up for the silence. But love without protection starts to feel like performance. I started to notice the looks, the quiet glances between him and his business partner when I spoke too boldly, the awkward clearing of throats when I mentioned where I grew up, the subtle, constant reminders that I didn't quite fit into their world. And I waited for him to speak up, to shut it down, to let them know I belonged just as much as anyone else in that room. But he never did. That was when it hit me. It wasn't that he didn't love me. It's that he didn't want to lose the comfort of his image. And slowly, I began to wonder, was I enough for the man, but too much for his empire? I remember the night I broke. It was after a high-profile gala, one of those over-the-top events with flashing cameras, gloved waiters, and air so thick with money it felt hard to breathe. I'd spent hours preparing. I wore a custom gown I designed myself, poured every inch of my heart into it. I wanted to show up fully, not just as his date, but as me. But from the moment we walked in, I felt like a ghost. People barely acknowledged me. Some looked past me like I wasn't even standing there. A few smiled, but only when he looked their way. And him? He didn't say a word, not when someone referred to me as your friend, not when I was left alone for over an hour by the bar while he talked deals and posed for photos. I stood there, watching him blend seamlessly into his world, while I faded into the background of it. That night, when we got back to his penthouse, I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I just asked him softly, "When you look at your future, do you see me in it, or do you just like having me beside you when no one's watching?" He looked startled, maybe even hurt, but he didn't answer right away. And in that silence, I felt something shift inside me, so I gave him the choice. Not in a dramatic, tear-filled way, just truth. You don't get to have both. If you want the image, the empire, the comfort of not challenging the people around you, you can keep it. But if you want me, all of me, you're You're going to have to fight for it. You're going to have to make space where I'm not just present but protected. Then I walked out and waited to see what he'd choose. I gave him a week, 7 days of silence. No texts, no calls, no explanations. Just space, something he always said he needed when things got intense. I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd use that space to figure out what really mattered. That he'd show up on my doorstep, breathless, with the words I needed to hear. But instead, on the 8th day, I got a notification, a press release. His company had just announced a strategic engagement to a woman I'd seen before, polished, connected, the kind of woman who already fit into those rooms I'd fought to be seen in. She wasn't better than me, just easier. That was the moment I knew. He didn't choose her because he loved her. He chose her because she made his life simpler, cleaner, safer. And in his world, appearances came first, even if it meant sacrificing something real. It stung in a way I can't even explain, not because I lost him, but because I realized he never truly planned to stand beside me when it counted. People talk a lot about heartbreak like it's this loud, messy thing. But mine was quiet. It came in waves. In the way I deleted his number but still remembered it. In the way I avoided our cafe for months. In the way I'd catch myself reaching for my phone, forgetting he no longer lived on the other side of it. I didn't hate him. I wish I did. It would have been easier. But no, I loved him. I loved him deeply. And he chose wrong. Not because I wasn't enough, but because he wasn't strong enough to stand next to a woman who didn't shrink. And that was his loss to carry, not mine. The weeks after he chose her were heavy. I won't lie, there were days I didn't get out of bed. Days where my phone stayed off, my studio stayed dark, and my heart felt like it had forgotten how to beat without pain. But somewhere in that silence, something powerful started to grow. I remembered who I was before him. Before the dinners and the penthouses and the whispers in gold-drenched rooms. I was never just someone's woman. I was a force, a creator, a storyteller. I didn't come this far to break. So I poured everything, every ache, every unanswered question into my work. I designed pieces that told my story without saying a word. I used my heartbreak like thread, stitching strength into every line, every curve. And people felt it. My next collection sold out in days. Magazines called it raw, honest, electric. But more than the press, it was the messages from Black women like me that lit me up. Women who said, I see myself in your work. Thank you, I started traveling, speaking, teaching young girls how to build from nothing, how to hold their heads high, even when the world tries to push them down. I stood on stages I once dreamed about and told the truth, that healing isn't linear, and sometimes power comes from simply surviving. One day, I looked in the mirror and realized I wasn't broken anymore. I was transformed, stronger, sharper, softer too, but in a way that felt earned. I didn't need his validation. I didn't need his name or his empire. I had built something better, a life that was mine, rooted in truth, watered by pain, grown from resilience, and blooming more beautifully than I ever thought possible. Looking back, I don't regret loving him, not for a second, because that love taught me everything I needed to know about myself. It showed me my depth, my softness, and most of all, my strength. I gave my heart to a man who couldn't hold it, and when he let it fall, I picked up the pieces and rebuilt it even stronger. Not harder, not colder, just wiser. I now know that real love doesn't ask you to shrink, to dim your light, or to choose silence when your voice shakes the room. Real love stands beside you, even when the world wants you invisible. So, to every Black woman listening, if you've ever been told you were too much, if you've ever had to dim your brilliance to make someone else comfortable, I want you to hear this. You are not the problem. You are the standard. You are the storm and the calm after it. You are allowed to take up space, to love deeply, and to walk away when that love isn't honored. And to anyone clinging to a love that makes them feel small, let go. There is a life waiting for you on the other side of fear. A life full of peace, purpose, and yes, a deeper kind of love, the kind you give yourself. If my story touched you, if you saw pieces of your own journey in mine, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with another woman who needs the reminder. Like, comment, and subscribe. I'm building a space here for real stories, real healing, and real power. And your voice belongs here too. Because this isn't just my story, it's ours. And trust me, the best chapters are still ahead. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear that you can walk away from what you want to protect who you are. Subscribe for more powerful stories from voices that matter, black, bold, and unbreakable.